Hi guys, in today's video I'll show you how I made this beautiful shirt and how you can make your own beautiful shirt as well. We are going to be starting from the front and I'll be using this pattern paper to show you how you can draft out your front. So I marked out 3 inches from the center there, and that is going to serve as my button placket. Okay, so from the center front to that line you're seeing is 3 inches. I'm going to measure it to show you what I'm talking about. So from that point, from the center to that line is 3 inches, and that's going to serve as my buttonhole holder. And I marked out the shoulder line, and on that shoulder line I'm going to mark, so on the shoulder line I'll mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, and on that point I'm marking 1 inch downwards for the shoulder slope. From the center where I did the placket, I'm going to mark 3 inches for the neck width and 3 inches for the neck depth, and I'm going to connect that point with my curved ruler. So I'm just connecting the neck depth for the front. Remember, we are marking the front now, so I'm going to connect from the neck width to the shoulder slope, the point where I marked for my shoulder slope. So that is what I have. So from that shoulder line I'm going to mark my my armhole round, my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches. Okay, and I'm going to connect that point with my straight ruler as well, and I'm just going to square from the bust line to the shoulder measurement. Okay, so this is now my bust line. On that armhole round I'm marking the middle, and on that point I'll go in by 1/2 inch. I'm just trying to get the front armhole. You know, the front armhole is deeper, so I marked 1/2 inch on the middle of that armhole line, and I just curved it out like this. Okay, so from that shoulder line I'm going to mark my waist measurement, which is 16 inches, and I'm going to mark my the length I want for this shirt, which is 25 inches. So I marked 26 because I will use 1 inch to fold my my shirt. Okay, so I'm just marking that measurement again, and I'll connect the points with my straight ruler like this. So now that all these measurements are out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and label what each of the lines are for. This is my waistline, and that's the full length of the shirt. So on the bust line I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 4. I placed my measuring tape on that line, okay, that line that I marked. So I marked my bust measurement divided by 4, and I marked 1/2 inch for ease allowance, and I marked 1 inch for seam allowance. Okay, and I'm going to curve that into the armhole line like so. On the waistline I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1/2 inch ease allowance, and on the full length I'm also going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4, and I added about 1 inch for seam allowance. Okay, so what you want to do is to mark your measurements, add your ease allowance and your seam allowance, whichever one you're comfortable working with. Okay, so I'm connecting from the hip line to the waistline and from the waistline to the bust line. So I just connected the points just the way you do for your basic bodies. Okay, and I'm going to cut. So on the lower part I just realized that I did not connect from the hip line. I did not connect my seam allowance on the hip line, so I just marked that now. Okay, so I connected from the actual measurement instead of from the seam allowance, so I just corrected that now, and I'm going to smoothen out the waistline so we don't have any sharp edge, and I can go ahead and cut out my pattern. So this is basically it on how to cut the front of the shirt pattern. So to cut out the neckline, you're going to fold the button placket inside just the way I'm doing it here, and then you're going to cut. After cutting, you just unfold it, and this is what we have for the front of our shirt. So this front you're going to cut into 2. Okay, you're going to cut 2 separate ones. Okay, so this is what I have for mine. Now I'm going to show you how to cut the back. I'll be using this pattern paper for the back, and as you can see I did not draw any line. So I'm going to mark my neck width of 3 inches, and for the back I use the neck depth of 1 inch. I'm just going to square up the line to connect the line with my curved ruler like so. After that, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, and from that point I'll go down by 1 inch, just the way we did for the front. Just go down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and I connected that to meet the neck width. So I'm marking my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches, and I'm going to mark my waistline 16 inches and the full length of the shirt. So you can decide to use whichever length you want for your shirt, okay? So you see I'm using 25 inches. So I'm going to mark the points I just made now. I'm going to connect the armhole down to the bust line, and I'm going to square up the bust line measurement. So now we have our bust line, and I'm going to square up the waistline as well, and I'm also going to make a straight line on the hip line. Okay, so all of our measurements are out. So now we are going to mark the bust measurement divided by 4. Okay, I'll mark that, and I'll add 1.5 inches, half an inch for ease and 1 inch for seam allowance. After that, I'll just connect with my curved ruler. So here you can see the difference between the front and the back armhole. For the front we went in, and for the back we just marked it straight. You can see the difference. And on the waistline, I will just mark my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1.5 inches, half an inch for ease allowance and 1 inch for the seam allowance. Okay, so I marked my hip measurement down here on the hip line. That is the full length of the dress, the shirt, and I just curve from that hip line to the armhole, the bust line. Okay, so I'm just going to connect from the waistline down to the bust line, then from the bust line to the hip line, and our shirt is ready, as you can see. So this is it. I'm just going to go ahead and label this as the back, and this you're going to cut on fold. Okay, you cut this on fold. You're not going to cut it 2 times the way you cut for the front. So I'm just going to cut this out, and that's basically it on how to make a shirt pattern. So I'm going to modify this shirt pattern, the lower part. So this is both the front and the back panel of our shirt. You can see the only difference between the front and the back is the armhole and the button placket that the front has. As you can see, this is the 3 inches extra I added for the front. So I'm going to place both the front and the back together, and you see this pointy part you have on the lower part. I do not want my shirt to have that, but this is strictly optional. If you don't want it, just leave it. So from the lower part, I marked a 1 inch upwards, and I'm just going to use my free hands to connect this to show you. If you don't have a curved ruler, you can just use your free hands to do this, curve it out, or you can use your curved ruler to curve it out, whichever one you have. And I'm going to cut that part out. This is because I do not want the side of my shirt to be pointy. Okay, so this is it, and that's basically it on how to cut this shirt pattern. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to stitch this together. Okay, so stay tuned.